Oh, so I can introduce us and you're not even here yet.
Yeah, even better.
Welcome to the Silver Lining Podcast with Luke and Monica.
All
This
right.
is your host, Luke Sorensen, also known as my husband. Let it be known, I talked first. Now it's your turn.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, yeah, welcome to our first recording. I don't think it's the first episode because I think that the episodes start after you do your intro podcast based on all
That's
of the
what
research.
I was thinking.
Yes. Obviously, we are not professional podcasters.
Oh, no.
Well, in fact, we're not really professional at anything. We're newlyweds. It's not like we're still green.
When does the newlywed phase end?
I think where my parents at, like 50, 51 years. Did you
Oh,
think
that's
about that?
high hopes.
Yeah,
That's high hopes.
Yeah.
This is positive thinking.
We're like 0.5% there. We're good. So anyway, yeah. So welcome to our first episode. If you're wondering why you're listening to us or why you hear our voices, we're still trying to figure out the same thing. So it's we're not going to stress about that today. But I guess Monica has all these questions, and I'm going to throw one at her first, just because.
Oh, no. I didn't write the questions down, though, so I don't really remember. I just had one main question.
Yeah, but the one main question is, why are we doing this podcast? So I'm going to ask Monica, why are we doing this podcast?
To share our story. We have a lot of story. A lot of previous story. Not so much our story now, but our past story and kind of how we got together.
Yeah, let's talk about what we're not going to talk about. This is not a marriage podcast.
Definitely not a child rearing podcast.
Parenting is what you meant to say. It's not that we're not parents. It's just that we're still learning how to be good parents. And when our kids watch this, so Jacqueline, Lance, Logan, Luke, Lyle, just know that we apologize in advance for all that you've been through and the therapy bills that you probably need. So there's that. No, it's not a marriage podcast, not really a parenting podcast, more of a life podcast. I will say this. We are not going to necessarily get political on the podcast, but because so much of politics and the culture kind of blends with biblical principles where we're at, I guarantee there will be some perspectives that we have that you probably might disagree with. And it's not that we don't care. That's the wrong verbiage, I guess, but it's just going to be, we're going to speak our minds, speak our hearts, and really speak to what we believe the Bible says and share a lot about our perspective of that. That doesn't mean we're right unless it's aligned with the Bible. Then we're right. If it's an opinion thing, then it's just an opinion thing.
I disagree with your opinions a lot of the time.
This is different. This is not a therapist. This is a podcast, darling. So no, just kidding. Anyway, so sharing our story. Let's talk more about, like, it sounds really, really vain when I hear it that way. Like, we're sharing our story just because we like to talk, or why are we sharing our story or your story or our us story?
There's a lot of Jesus in our story. A whole lot.
Care to embellish at all in that?
Which part? The before part or the
not necessarily the story, but just
part?
like the concept of like why we're telling our story. What inspired you? Like a couple months ago, we're listening to podcasts. By the way, we have a couple podcasts we highly recommend that we'll mention many times. Side by Side with Keith, Pastor Keith Birdsong. Is one that we highly recommend, kind of through the Bible in a year.
Yeah.
And so Monica and her parents were listening to that. And so there was a concept, man, like 2 months ago. You're like, man, we should, how did it come up?
I don't remember. I do know that when we got married, and I remember Rita Jackson made a comment about, we should write a book. And that's kind of what started like the whole, we should write a book. And then I don't know where the whole podcast thing really came from.
I think it came from, like, ultimately I've always wanted to write a book, but I haven't written a book. I've written a lot, but not put it in book format, and just the concept of I like to talk and hate to write. So podcasting is just way easier for me.
Well, you're the one that had suggested that we do podcast and then our chapters would turn into
I had this great idea, which I have a lot of great ideas. I don't follow through. We did the execution for really just about anybody else in my life. I have some good ideas. On my concept was like, hey, well, we could tell our story through podcast and recording and kind of get some outlines of really where some of the stuff that we've been through, and that really not really that we've been through. I think that's the wrong concept of the story, but looking what God has done through us, with us, in spite of us, to bring us together. There's part of it that I love our love story. There's part of it that a lot of our love story has a grief story, so that while there's a lot that we get to celebrate and have a lot of happy right now, and I know that there's still the difficulties of marriage and life and all that, but there's a lot in our past that we can point to and say, at the time we couldn't see what God was doing and it didn't make any sense. But now looking back, it's like, wow, look what God was doing. And that makes a lot of sense. And I know that we still see through a glass darkly. We're not even seeing the whole picture, but I think what picture we do get to see, I know a lot of individuals that have been a part of our story, that followed our story, they've been able to celebrate with us and be a part of the joyful part. And I'm sure that there's some that are probably annoyed that this is a produced podcast. And again, not that we don't care, but we're each entitled to our opinion, and you have yours and we have ours. So if you're hearing this and you feel offended by that, please reach out. You've got my number. All that to say, I think there was a concept of how do we share our
grief story. And that was originally going to be the name, sharing our grief story. And then I was like, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, but because
It was kind of like that concept.
Because we are going to share our grief stories, a story and testimony of what God has done. But the purpose of it is not to talk about grief. But I guess the purpose of the podcast is to share our story, to encourage others through their grief story. Because I know that we both know individuals that even now are going through maybe divorce or maybe loss because of death or loss because of any other kind of loss. We'll talk a lot about that, where you don't really see what is going on. And you certainly don't see it as a good thing. And we'll talk about how God can work through hard things and work through bad things and make them good things. Not because I think there's a concept that a lot of times when you go through hard times, growing up as a Christian, it's like, well, God makes all things together for good. He does it for good, but that doesn't mean that bad things are good things. So it's like, death or divorce or trauma or some horrible things that have happened to maybe you or people and you're like, well, God's going to work it for good. He will. It'll be for your good and his glory. That doesn't mean a bad thing is a good thing. And so I think the concept of the podcast is we had thought about putting our story and kind of putting it in a framework of chapters so that we could eventually turn it into a book. I don't know that will ever happen, but we do want to be an encouragement and really be a steward of what God has done and is doing in our lives now, but what he's done to a lot of our hurt and a lot of our heartbreak to really bring us to a place that while there's still grief and loss and still pain in that, there's a part of our life right now where we get to see a more of a sovereign picture. And while you might not ever get to see that, we won't ever get to see the full picture. I think it's really fun to be able to just talk about it and encourage others that are going through their time, for sure.
It's raining.
Yes.
And thundering. So
yeah.
I thought it'd be a great day to
Yes.
start the Silver Lining podcast.
Yes. Why Silver Lining, Monica? Why we brainstormed on all these great name ideas. ChatGPT was very helpful.
Oh, yes. Yes, it was.
I don't think we'd be here without ChatGPT. And by the way, they're not sponsoring us, but they should.
They should, because we use them a lot.
Yeah. Primarily brainstorming, name ideas. Why Silver Lining?
Because even in the clouds, even in the storm, even in the dark times, there's always a silver lining if you choose to see it.
And I think that it is a choice thing.
Yes. It's like joy is a choice.
Yes. Yeah.
You choose that.
Yeah. And I want to highlight a picture in the corner. If you're watching on YouTube, you're watching the video, that is a picture from Destin, Florida, but
2016.
2016.
A long time ago.
Which is obviously, if we go back, we'll take our story back there eventually. I think that there'll be some stuff that we may not talk about now that we'll talk about later in the podcast. There's some stuff that's still close to our hearts that I want to honor individuals, obviously family members. We're not trying to air dirty laundry when it comes to our lives or anyone's lives. So we'll talk in some ambiguous terms, but you can read between the lines. With that comes the concept of, hey, we have a story that goes back where as we met and started talking, which is a very funny story. We'll start telling that here shortly. But our lives aligned a long time before we ever met. And so we didn't meet, formally until a couple months after Alicia passed away in 2023. And God had already worked out a lot of things in our lives prior to us meeting. That we're going to talk about this. Ultimately the purpose of it is we get to share our story. We think it's beautiful. It's like our favorite story. So you can have your favorite story. This one's mine.
And we sit around and talk about it frequently. So we thought we'd just put a camera on and make it authentic.
Yeah. And for those of you thinking like, man, I did not see Monica Sorensen going on a podcast. Me neither. This was not on my bingo card for 2025. If you had asked me when we first got married, if I ever thought that Monica would be on any version of recording or podcast by her choice, I would have said no, absolutely not. And I know that Dad, Pinkerton, I know you're surprised. Mom, you're surprised. Appreciate you
They're
being there.
probably passed out from watching this.
Yeah, our only 2 listeners. Just want to say thank you for your support on and all fronts, but especially the podcast. So anyway, yeah. So where do we start today? Like, and I love the silver lining concept. I was laughing. I know that my sister-in-law has
I was thinking about
that
too.
So Janie, if you're listening to this, we didn't steal your name, but we do love the silver lining ranch concept. But for us, silver lining is life is going to hit you whether you like it or not. We live in a sin-filled world. We live in a broken world, and there's a lot of pain that we're going to experience in life. And I know that for anyone who's listening, and I really don't care if that's 1 or 2 or however many, everybody's experienced hurt and pain. And there's just a time when you really feel like you're in a storm. And we'll talk about songs in one of the podcasts later on, but one of my favorite songs is It Is Well With My Soul. It has always been, from the time I was a young teenager, one of my favorite songs, from the concept of, Horatio Spafford and the concept of someone going through the loss of his daughters, and as he's crossing over the ocean, finding out that this is where his daughters would have drowned, being able to write a song saying, "It is well with my soul." It is well with my soul, and silver lining does not mean that there are no storms. In fact, without storms, without dark clouds, there is no silver lining. Also, without the sun, there is no silver lining. So in spite of us, the clouds, the storm, there's a beautiful picture of the grace of God, and ultimately how God can redeem your story. And God has redeemed our story for his glory and for our good. And we're grateful for that. That we're not coming at this from a state of that we have anything to give other than glory to God. Like our value add, you're like, what's the point of the podcast? We're just going to talk about the goodness of God, the grace of God, the love of God, the sovereignty of God, and ultimately try to bring illustrations and stories that are not even necessarily our own, but and maybe encourage us through a time, or are still encouraging us through a time. So, but that's in a nutshell. So you're like, hey, why are you guys here? Because she stepped on a duck. So
I was just about to say, you should tell your joke.
It's not a joke. It's a good story.
Is that what it is? A story or
Depends
joke?
on how well I tell it.
And did you tell? I was thinking about this earlier. Did you tell me this joke before we were married or after we were married?
I don't remember. We're just going to pretend that I told her in advance to warn her, but I don't think I did.
I don't think you did.
Yeah, no. Well, I'll say this. This is kind of an inside joke, and if you listen to us long, I'll reference this quite often. There were 3 men who died and went to heaven. They're 3 very egotistical men. And of course, St. Peter meets them at the gate. And for those of you that would be offended by St. Peter jokes, I'll tell several of them. They're great. I apologize that they're offensive. They're not biblical. That's not the point. They're funny. That's the point.
Just a joke.
Just a joke. One of many disclaimers we'll probably give. But 3 guys who are very arrogant, very vain, very egotistical. They think they're all that. They die and go to heaven. They get to the gate. St. Peter's there. St. Peter welcomes them. He's like, hey, I'm glad you're here. I'm surprised you're here, but I'm glad you're here. Heaven's a little bit different than maybe you have heard or thought. Just, it's a beautiful place. It's wonderful. But I need to warn you, we really just have one rule here. Don't step on a duck. And they're like, wait, what? Why? What's with the duck? Like, how many ducks can there be? He's like, I don't have time to explain it all. Just don't step on a duck. And so these 3 men enter the gates of heaven, and there are ducks everywhere. The place is like, it's a beautiful place, but there are ducks everywhere. And it's not 5 minutes later, and one of the individuals steps on a duck, and immediately some angels bring this hideous lady, ugly lady. I was going to make a comment. Never mind. An ugly lady, and handcuffs it to him. And he's like, what's this about? And he's like, well, you stepped on a duck. Well, the other 2 are immediately horrified at the potential of being handcuffed to a hideous lady for the rest of eternity. So they're very, very careful. And as they go through it, a couple days later, the second one steps on a duck. And sure enough, same thing happens, handcuffed to a hideous lady for all of eternity because he stepped on a duck. The third guy did pretty well. He's really, really careful. He goes about 90 days, does not step on a duck. He's kind of figured out this real careful, watch your step, don't be running around heaven, right? He's got it down. 90 days in, these angels come up and handcuff gorgeous, this gorgeous lady to him. And he's like, wow, what did I do to deserve this? She's like, well, I don't know what you did, but I stepped on a duck. Anyway, so we don't really know what Monica did, but we're pretty sure she stepped on a duck, and I'm really, really grateful for it. So we kind of acclaimed that I am always saying that she adopted me and my
your
four
kids.
kids. But for those of you who don't know us,
oh, that would be good to tell.
yeah, we assume that everybody knows us, even though there's not that many people that know us. Right?
Not really. Luke Sorensen has 4 kids, so I have 4 kids now.
Yes.
5, counting him.
Let's tell a brief story.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you questions on your story. So we're going to go back. I'm going to give the premise of the story. My name's Luke Sorensen. I genuinely care about people.
That phrase caught me real fast.
We'll talk later about that. This is my wife, Monica Sorensen. We've been married just over 18 months, and very happily married. I have 4 kids from my first wife, Alicia Sorensen, or Alicia Adams Sorensen. We were married for almost 13 years. And while we'll get into the story later on of the details and all that, she passed away in August of 2023. And it was surprising. There's obviously a lot to that story. We'll get into it. So she's in heaven now, and we celebrate that she's right where she's supposed to be. And we'll obviously talk more on that. And over that time, obviously with a lot of support from family and from our church, and just a village that got us through that time, and we're very supportive of me as a single dad and the kids who were pretty young. Jacqueline was 11 at the time, and then I have 3 boys. So I have my daughter who's now a teenager but was 11 at the time, and then my 3 boys, 2 autistic boys, and Logan. So Lance, Logan, and Luke Lyle. We'll confuse his name sometimes when we're talking. We'll call him Lyle, but his name's Luke Lyle, and so
he likes to be called Luke.
Yeah, he likes to be called Luke. We're working on that. But
I have a hard time with that.
Yeah. So
not because your name is Luke, but because I'm so used to calling him Lyle.
Yeah, and that's he's named after some dear friends, Samuel Lyle Hinton, who passed away back in 2016. Again, longer version, part of our story. But Monica came into our lives a couple months later, really at Christmas of 2023. We started just briefly connected. We'd been, and again, we're not going to spoil the story, but she came into our lives and we were married a few months later. So March of 2024. Monica and I got married, and she came into our lives, and it's a beautiful story. We'll talk more about that, but that's the premise. I'm going to go back to Monica's story. So that's why we're here, right? I'm going to jump back to Monica so she can kind of tell just a vague overview of your grief story, if you would.
Talking about being married.
Yeah, that
prior
one.
to.
Yeah,
that one. That was not pretty. So I was married for 18 months, and I was married to a alcoholic, and then he left right before COVID happened, and I moved in with my parents. And about, I want to say it was like a year and a half later, I found out I had cancer, and so I had fought all that, and then shortly after that, we kind of connected.
Yeah, and I think
there's a whole lot in between.
There's a whole lot.
There's a whole lot
there we're going to talk about, and I think I'm going to say this: our next episode, or really our first episode. Obviously, this is our intro episode, and we want to thank you for taking the time to even listen to this point. Our next episode, we're going to talk about really a lesson that Monica learned and heard about after we were married, but it's really been a beautiful thing to us, and it's the concept of welcome to Holland. It's not our story. But it's a great message, and we want to start out there to put in perspective that no matter where you are in life, no matter what hurt you've been through, no matter what hurt you're currently going through, whether you are currently going through a divorce, and as hard as that is, with the stigma and just the concept and what your expectation was and what your reality is, and really the grief alignment of how grief works, and grief is, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's the concept of, a lot of times we apply grief to the loss of a loved one. We lose a grandparent, we lose a parent, we lose a child, maybe a miscarriage, whatever it is. We attribute grief as to death, if you would, which is kind of true. And there's a huge part of it that's a part of that, right? But I do believe, and I've learned over the years, and is my strong belief, that grief is the misalignment between what we expected and what we planned and what we thought and what we dreamed about and our reality. And grief is the alignment of this is what I thought my life was going to be. This is the job I thought, the life, the marriage, the family, the whatever it is, and this is where I'm at. And it's not the same. And if that's you, then this podcast is going to be for you, no matter what stage of life. You might be single and have never been married and have got your own versions of grief, of career, of plan, of trauma that you're dealing with based on your past. For some of you, you are married and you're dealing with different other battles of grief, maybe the loss of a loved one. Some of you literally have lost someone. You've lost a spouse, you've lost a child, you've lost a parent or someone very close to you, you've lost a sibling. And I just want to say we can't take away that pain, and we can't change your circumstance. What we want to do is encourage you to look to Jesus and be able to still find the joy and be looking for the silver lining, not because we want everything to have a silver lining and kind of repurpose it, just because there always is a silver lining. God is going to work it for good. Now, we don't know when, we don't get to dictate that, but the fact that he does work it for good is a tremendous promise that we're going to lean into and have some fun talking about. But Monica, give us your last thoughts for this episode, last thoughts on what you would want someone that's listening to this, that's really going through whatever they're going through, whether it's divorce and the stigma there and all of the pain that goes into that, irrelevant of which perspective, whether it be the guy or the gal, whether it be someone who it's the divorce is their fault or the divorce is not their fault. It's not their choice. Whatever life stage you're going through, what would you want our listeners to know and to expect going into this podcast?
Well, while you were just talking about the whole grief thing, it took me a while after my divorce to realize that is a form of grief.
Form of loss, yeah.
Form of loss, form of grief. So I think sometimes, and once I realized that, I don't know, it was just like eye-opening for me.
Almost freeing.
That I realized. Almost freeing, yes.
Yeah. Because I think that specifically with divorce, and we'll actually have a lot of conversations on that, because obviously Monica's divorced, and we know that there's an audience out there of individuals that are really grieving the loss, not because they're necessarily even grieving their former spouse, but because they're grieving the loss of the life they thought they were going to have when they got married and now where they're at. But I think there's so many variations of grief and loss where you're processing it, and it's almost like if someone didn't die, you don't have the freedom to grieve and then mourn the loss. So the concept of grief is the emotion of loss, and that comes across in many different variations. Everybody grieves differently. Mourning, mourning, mourning is what you do with the grief, and we'll talk about that. Like, how do you mourn, right? And we're not going to give you a one size fits all, because I don't think there is, but I believe in the picture of your loss, whatever that is, right? And we don't want to make your identity about your loss. We just want to make sure you understand, like, hey, it's okay to mourn the loss of what you're experiencing. You need to feel what you need to feel, but then look for the silver lining to say, but God, how does God get the glory in your grief and in your loss without it becoming your identity, where you walk around carrying the loss as a almost like a badge of honor or a badge of dishonor? You know, that concept it's not biblical. It's not what God would have us to do, because we are children of the King. And when you're the child of the King, you walk and talk differently. And that's what we'd encourage you to do as we go through the Silver Lining podcast. So that is our first recording. Any last words? No last words. So she can start it, but she's not going to finish it. I see how it is. So welcome to the Silver Lining. Appreciate you being a part of it. We'll look forward to the episodes as we go. We have no idea how consistent, inconsistent, or how far this goes.
Zero clue.
Yeah, this might be our only episode. This might be our only recording. Like, we'll find out as soon as I turn off the camera and she tells me how we did. So thank you for listening. We'll look forward to getting you next time here on the Silver Lining podcast.